Well, a change of pace indeed, from how medicine meets society to how technology meets the city. So how smart are smart cities? Well, these days, cities across the world are scrambling to become smart cities, from Masdar to Melbourne to Wollongong. And certainly the promise of making cities smart is tantalising and potentially transformative. A smart city... Toby? Needs a smart user, and I'm clearly not one. A smart city is one with connected networks of sensors, mobile technologies, and computational capacity embedded across the city's infrastructure. And it feeds back a deluge of real-time data that lets us monitor and manage traffic, airflows, noise levels, water and energy use. And we can track the movement of people and objects. We can access community and commercial services on demand through our digital devices. And we can use digital consultation tools to gather feedback from people about how the city is working. Then, by analysing all of the data that all of these things feed back, we can manage and, in theory, optimise how the city works. So in essence, the smart city promises that we can make sense of the city and improve it through integrated smart technologies and all of the big data they generate. It's not a surprise then that the notion of the smart city is being promoted by federal government, by state government, and by global technology corporations. Not working. There we go. Thank you, Toby. I'm just going to say Toby every time I need the slide changed. In short, so we've got federal and state governments promoting them. We've got the global technology corporations like Cisco, eager to supply the platforms and the technology that underpin it. And if it means that we improve efficiency and convenience, that we save resources, that we enhance the livability and the sustainability of the city, then what city would not want to become smart? It promises so much. What could possibly go wrong? Well, there are pitfalls, but what are they, and how can we address them? Becoming smart does change how a city is governed, and it does this in a couple of important and risky ways, and I want to focus on those. First, to develop and embed smart infrastructure across a city generally means that city governments need to partner with private sector businesses to attract the expertise and the investment. And it partners with tech firms like Sidewalk Labs. Sidewalk Labs is the smart city arm of Google. And the tech firms' interests in partnering is huge because global smart city markets are so lucrative. They're estimated to be worth $3.5 trillion by 2026. So the big tech and the software corporates, like IBM, for instance, have been promoting their smart city platforms across the globe, in Australia from Adelaide to Townsville. Internationally, tech corporate interests have become a powerful influence in city politics, able to refashion urban policy and regulation in the image of their needs and in the image of the market. In New York, for example, at the Hudson Yards Smart City Precinct, corporations like Sidewalk Labs have been seeking to set the urban policy agenda, having city building codes and data privacy regulations changed to meet their specific business aspirations. In San Francisco, a conglomerate of tech interests, like the ones you see here, clustered in the Soma district of the city, they've been successfully influencing the city's tax laws and the regulation of the taxi and the property rental industry to allow on-demand services like Airbnb and Uber that we all use, to allow them to boom. There's a challenge here for city governments. In the smart city, tech firms can be involved right across the public infrastructure of a city. And they have an interest in monetizing that public infrastructure, like parking spaces, by making them a source of data that they can mine for profit. So, for example, they can develop smart parking apps that alert a driver where there's a free parking space while simultaneously sending them alerts about the commodities that are for sale in nearby businesses. So making parking efficient gets packaged with customized commerce. And this all raises the stakes for city governments when it comes to trying to integrate and to balance the business priorities of their tech partners with the other social and environmental priorities of the city and with wider public interests. And we know only too well that these priorities don't always perfectly align. A second way that becoming smart changes how a city is governed is in the way that it changes how we know a city. The logic of the smart city is that we can have perfect knowledge of the city and its functioning. It suggests that a city can be made perfectly transparent through the masses of data that in this logic speak for themselves objectively and that won't be interpreted or valued differently by different communities with different interests. This logic also suggests that we can objectively deduce and then enact data-driven, self-evident solutions that will control and improve the city. So it envisages the city as a steerable machine that can be optimized for efficiency. But of course, sensors and digital devices can only ever capture what's amenable to being captured digitally. What can be enumerated, what can be encoded. So if we need to capture other qualitative dimensions of the city, we need to use proxies, like taking average walking speeds as a measure of the pace of urban life or of urban livability, or to measure the number of patents that are submitted as a measure of the city's innovation or creativity. So there are clear issues here of what and who might get left out in the focus on quantitative data. And there are issues around how data spatially and socially underrepresents populations who might tend to engage less with the digital world, like the elderly or like low-income communities. Research on data gleaned from social media in US cities, for instance, has been shown to vastly underrepresent African American communities. What can drop out of view through the data-driven lens of the smart city is the unpredictable and complex messiness of cities, the aspects of city life and our experience of it that can't be easily counted, and the competing values of different communities and interests in the city. Data-driven city governance can suggest that smart city solutions are value-free and that the urban problems that count are the ones that can be counted. And beyond this, the data-driven lens encourages us to frame urban problems in terms of how we might solve them digitally and computationally, when the issues might in fact be bigger, more socially complex, more intractable than this. Here's a good example. Philadelphia, a city in the US that, like Wollongong, is transitioning from an industrial to a knowledge economy. The city has significant social problems, particularly around high unemployment in low-income neighbourhoods. The city gave its budget for addressing this problem towards a smart city solution, developing a smart online skills training programme for young people that they could access on their mobile devices. It was intended to skill them up for jobs in the knowledge industries. But the smart city solution fell short because the programme couldn't address the distance between the location where the jobs were being created, the location of the kids' neighbourhoods, and the lack of a transit link between them. So it gives us a good indication of the ways that smart city solutions may not be so smart for everyone. Now, none of this is to say that we shouldn't pursue smart cities. Their potential is extraordinary. But what can be done to avoid the pitfalls and get it right? Well, I want to suggest 3 strategies that cities should have in their playbooks to ensure that smart city benefits are inclusive. First, start with the people and the problems, not the technology. So before the sensor networks, the data gathering devices and the digital connections are installed, a city needs to consider what are the real problems and needs we're addressing here. And only then, knowing what those problems and needs are, look at the appropriate technology. In the UK, the city of Bristol did this via a project to build smart services from the ground up, involving the community in defining the problems they wanted addressed. And the community identified damp in homes as their first priority. A team then designed this, the Frog Box. Doesn't look terribly smart, but it's a smart device laden with sensors. It sits in people's home, it monitors humidity, it monitors temperature, it provides feedback on how to address it, and the data are fed back also to the local council. So here the citizens are not just data receptors, they're involved in decision making in a citizen-led smart city, identifying the problems that will shape how the city becomes smart and to what ends. Second strategy. When it comes to signing on with tech partners, ensure that the data generated by smart technologies belong to the city and the citizens. Some local governments have been left having to buy their own city's data back because the technology installed was proprietary. The data was owned by the tech firms. So open data and open source technology are a must. Final strategy. Keep questions of social justice and equity outcomes front and centre. We need to pose the question of all smart city initiatives. Do they address or exacerbate existing urban inequalities? And that means persistently asking the question, smart for whom? Who does the initiative serve? Who has or has not got the digital capacity to benefit? Who owns and profits from the data that's generated? Now, I'm happy to say that Wollongong Smart City Initiative appears to have put these strategies into play. And I'm happy to say that particularly because it involves my colleagues here at the Smart Infrastructure Facility and the digital lab they're developing with the city. This is a people-first vision of the smart city. It focuses on community-oriented projects, aged care, flooding, emergency services. Tick. It's based on low-cost, non-commercial technology, so there's no need to involve a large telecommunications corporation, and it's committed to open data. Tick. And while it's still early days, it does appear to have a concern for social justice and equity in its bones. So very finally, nobody really knows where smart city technologies are going to take our cities. But we do know that smart cities can be enacted in really different ways. What a smart city becomes is not technologically determined, it's political. And it involves us asking, what sort of smart city do we want to become? And how we answer this question is what determines how smart a smart city really is. Thank you.